Sylvia Snowden is a walking, talking, brightly shining example of what being a native Chicagoan looks like. Simmering just beneath her calm surface, however, beats the heart of a tenacious, uber-compassionate fighter. Each week on her wildly successful show, one that as of September of this year now bears her name, Sylvia Snowden makes politics make sense for Chicagoans who might otherwise find it all an overly complicated exercise in futility beyond understanding. Please join me and my colleague and friend, Sylvia Snowden, in the arena right now.
3, 2, 1.
Here we go!
Sylvia Snowden, the host becomes the guest.
How about it?
How about it? So I know this is going to be slightly different for you. You're very good at being a host. I'm sure you're going to be fantastic at being a guest.
Well, you know, I'm just so honored to be here that I'm going to, no, seriously, because you are Can TV's executive director, right? And newly minted executive director. And so sometimes when you get new folks coming in, they have the right to fire everybody, to slash and burn, to bring in their folks and do what they do. But not only did you not fire me.
Yes, I'm listening. I'm loving how this is starting. Go on.
Did you not fire me? You gave me a show in the signature lineup, and then you've invited me to join you in the arena.
Come on.
So, I mean, when I talk about gratitude.
I mean, but if you're going to talk about it, though, if you, like Usher said, if you're going to tell it all.
Well, all right.
You were also promoted to where you are now technically my boss because you were fairly recently, but my goodness, you got in there. You are a production supervisor for all Can signature programming, documentaries, and specials. So that is, I've taken my first set of notes from, it wasn't as painful as I thought, but you remember, you came out and went, okay.
What?
Okay, you were loving. And I said, she's doing compliment, then fix it.
But one little minor fix it, because you're so talented at this. So I mean, really you are. I mean, people can tell, like, just naturally emanating talent, great personality, insightful questions.
Okay, you know what? Stop hosting. Stop hosting my show. I see what you're doing. You stop it. Let's begin at the beginning.
Yes.
You were, and I think there is, you know, I don't believe in luck and happenstance. I believe there is divine order and appointment. And the fact that you came into this world on Juneteenth.
Yeah.
Years, not so many ago, but years ago at Illinois Masonic Hospital.
Yes.
But as I'm looking always for themes and patterns, that somehow suits you, being born on Juneteenth. You are the oldest of 3 siblings.
That's true.
You all, something else we share in common, you and your siblings were steps.
Yes, yes.
So it is you,
yes.
your sister,
yes.
your brother.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Are you all close?
Oh, we're best buddies. We have no choice. I mean, I think that kind of throughout the many travails of life.
Yes, and we'll talk about some of them.
Yes, you know, kind of really all you have, you learn very quickly, it is your family.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, to be sure, having them by my side throughout my life is amazing. And it's so funny that you bring up me being born on Juneteenth. I remember the first time I heard that Juneteenth had some special significance. And then, of course, that is June 19th for people who may not be familiar. And I came home and I told my dad, I said, hey, you know, Dad, there's this holiday, Juneteenth, and it falls on my birthday, and it signifies freedom for our people because the last set of slaves in Galveston received the information that would set them free and change their lives. And I told him that. He said, maybe that's what you were waiting for. I said, waiting for? He said, well, yeah, you were born several days late. You were supposed to be here, but you just wouldn't come.
Oh, you understood timing from the beginning. Okay.
So sort of. So I said, really? So yeah, perhaps that's what you were waiting on. So yeah.
How about that? And you said something, and I just want to touch on it because when there is, and we'll talk about it, when there is life, loss, transformation, where you have experienced things that cut to the core of your being, does not have to go the way it goes with you and your siblings. I've seen where it goes one of two ways. You become closer or you all become further apart. So you're very fortunate, but that it can go the other way. I've seen it go the other way, so that it didn't for you all is a testament.
Yeah.
Because there is another choice, unfortunately. Maybe not for your family.
No, we've seen Soul Food.
Yes.
We've seen all
Come
the
on.
yes.
Listen,
Get to
I've
fighting
seen
over
both
Big
the
Mama's house.
movie
Yeah.
and the TV show, sweetie. And that feels more like when I watch that, I go, that's my house. I don't know. We'll talk about your house. Your house was different, but that was mine.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
You graduated, you were Chicago through and through. You
Yes.
graduated from Morgan Park in 2002-ish.
Yeah, ish.
Ish. You graduated from the university, here we go. You graduated from MIZ
ZOU.
in 2006. Your mother and your grandmother are both college graduates and AKAs.
Yeah.
Your maternal grandfather graduated from Talladega and then went on to grad school at Stillman, where he went on to become an instructor.
Close.
Oh, I almost got it.
Yes. So my maternal grandfather did graduate from Talladega College in Talladega, Alabama. But his father, my maternal great-grandfather, graduated from Stillman College.
It goes back even deeper.
Yeah.
My goodness. And here's what I find interesting but beautiful about our culture. Your maternal side feels, we know it exists, but it feels like a bit more of an outlier. But then your father, by contrast, graduated from Lindblom High School.
He sure did.
He was the first in his family to attend college. He went to community college at Wilson Junior College, which is now Kennedy King.
That's correct.
Kennedy the King. And then he moved on to Illinois State for his BA. And then he moved on to Northwestern.
Yes.
So clearly,
Yeah.
I mean, Northwestern is Northwestern.
Yes.
And your father is a practicing lawyer.
That's correct.
So when we talk about education, on one side, on your maternal side, it was your legacy. It is, and I can only imagine how it must have been back for your great-grandfather to even dare suggest a college education, that he was worthy and deserved it. But that was entrenched in you, where in so many families like ours it is not. But then you look at your father, where he is the first, and there is not examples, but he knew. He knew. And your mother and father came together in a union.
Yes.
And merged these two worlds peacefully.
I'd like to think so.
You're like, that's what I'm going with.
Well, as far as I know, you know, it was a very peaceful coexistence between the two of them. I think even though they had sort of very different backgrounds, all of my grandparents were proponents of education, you know, two, because they had it, and two, because they had not. And I think, you know, kind of understanding what happens to Black people who don't have an opportunity to go to school and to become educated, and how that can limit you.
So in your family, you had the examples of both.
Exactly. So they all believe very much in the power of that for our community, and wanted that for my parents, and certainly wanted that for me and my siblings,
Okay. Let's talk about, you talked about the things that galvanize a family, loss, change, transition. You have some significant losses that I want to dig into, if we may.
Sure.
What happened when you were in the 5th grade?
Well, when I was in 5th grade, before I was in 5th grade, my mother had developed a limp. It was, you know, a slight limp, but she had such a very regal stride that I noticed it right away. And I think people who knew her well noticed right away that there was something different about the way she was walking. And she walked like that for maybe a year, going to different doctors trying to figure out why her balance was slightly off. And finally, after a year of seeing physicians, I remember my grandfather sitting me down and telling me that my mother had finally received a diagnosis of ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease. And I remember not knowing what it was, but knowing it was fatal. I mean, I just, and I mean, you want to talk about, I cried in the dark for 3 hours straight, nonstop, because I knew that was it. Knowing nothing else but the name Lou Gehrig, I knew that was it, yeah.
And how did so your mom was diagnosed around 94, 95.
Yeah.
She made her transition in 99.
Yeah.
How did your family, and you're the oldest, so that
I
means
am.
your siblings were even younger.
Yes, yes.
So what are your memories of how you all, the siblings, your family, processed the news as you were watching your mom begin what you knew was going to be an inevitable journey? And then once your mom left, how did that impact your family? How did it impact you then, and even to this day? How do you feel the remnants of that? Because it's a loss that you never get over completely.
No, I don't know if anyone ever really fully gets over the loss of their mother, but to go through it at such a young age, and and not just the fact that she passed. I mean, anyone who has seen someone die from ALS knows it's a very slow, painful death to watch somebody go through. You watch someone literally become entombed, essentially, in their bodies, slowly having just the synapses of the spine just like kind of gradually go. Yeah. So and then all of your, what do you call it? Her muscles slowly deteriorated.
Yes. And she is fully aware.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
That is,
right. Now her mind remains sharp.
Yes.
And
so it's not like dementia where she knows what's happening.
She's fully aware of what's happening and fully aware that she has a very limited amount of time to try to, impart into her children as much as she can, especially me because I'm the oldest, because she knows that the clock is ticking. But I mean, you talk about, your mother just being the heart and soul of your family and just sort of slowly watching that heartbeat just fade. But I mean, to, her credit, I come from, I think, a very long line of very determined women. You talk about somebody who still every single day, got up and from her, whether it was her cane to her walker to her wheelchair to her bed. You came by it honestly. No, I mean, she was still my mother who still said, hey, is that homework done? Hey, what are we wearing to homecoming? Hey, what are we? Yes. She did not stop being a mother, and she never stopped telling me that she wanted to see me become everything she believed I could be, even if she couldn't be there to go with me.
How did your relationship, yours specifically with your father, change, if at all, once your mom left the family?
I, growing up, was very much a mama's girl. Oh. I really, really was. You see, people don't know that because people see me and my daddy walking down the street.
Yes, I met, and I was like, oh my, he came to surprise you here at the studio.
It's compliments of my daddy. He just, but I was very much a mama's girl. I felt like my mother knew me. She understood me like nobody else in this world, right? And to watch her go through, this muscular atrophy was very difficult. But I felt like she was really the conduit in a lot of ways. In my relationship with my dad, she was the one who really understood me and could kind of, maybe get in the middle and translate and really kind of help us, get our footing and find our way. I felt like she did that.
Because she knew you needed to.
Yeah, she knew she needed to do that. And I think a lot of mothers do that. Yeah. But it was very, I would say, a wonderful period of discovery for me and my father to actually have a chance to, even though, obviously we were in a great deal of pain. Sure. But we had to really build our relationship kind of independently of my mom, and I think that's really been a journey for us. But I'm so glad that we went through it because, like he pops up here.
Snazzy and one of the, listen.
Just to see how things are going. To say, hey, he calls me Jack. He says, hey, Jack, you're doing a great job. I'm proud of you. Who you're interviewing this week. Yeah. And
the look in his eyes when I tend to build my connection to people through their connection to the people important to them. Yeah. And the way he looked at you and the way you looked at him as like, okay, these are good people. But and also, he was dressed, I don't know if does he dress like that every day? Your father was dressed for the gods. I mean, it was just polished and professional.
And he's going to love you for saying that.
Okay, good.
Absolutely. No, that's his thing, and he comes by that honest. His mom, my grandmother, worked at Saks Fifth Avenue her entire career dressing the mannequins.
Okay.
And so she was a very stylish woman.
So he knows how to hang a suit.
Yes, absolutely. And she passed that right on down to him, and he has tried his best to pass it.
He's honoring listen, when he walked out, I was like,
Yes,
okay, sir.
Yes,
Yes.
that is my daddy, yes.
Wow, that your daddy. No.
At all these years later.
Yes.
Yes.
At anywhere between 22 and 40.
Yes.
That'll start being it.
Yes.
That wasn't, I want to talk about something.
Yeah.
You wrote, and I read it again this weekend, you wrote a rather compelling piece for HuffPost.
Yeah.
I want you to tell me about the circumstances that prompted that article,
Sure.
that piece that you wrote. And then I'm going to ask you for a favor, but tell me about the circumstances that compelled you to write that piece.
Okay. So on January 1st of 2016, my cousin, Ricky, was shot to death in Inglewood. And shot to death is almost too generous. He's essentially executed, shot 13 times in the face, the eye, the neck, I think the ear and the chest. And of course, when I got the news the next morning, I was devastated, I was stunned, I was shocked, saddened to see his life having ended that way. He had just gotten married, he and his wife were raising 6 sons, and to see his life end in that fashion was just sad. But of course, you know, like anybody who loses someone, I'm thinking, well, gee, like, what happened?
What happened?
So I do like anyone else and go and Google to see what I can find out. And I see that a local news outlet has acknowledged that the shooting occurred, that he was killed in it, and then they make sure to put that tagline at the end that, you know, police sources say he was a documented gang member.
So.
Yeah, documented gang. And that, I mean, I can't tell you, you know, how devastating that is to read something like that about a relative of yours, sort of maybe the worst thing that the person has ever done now that they're dead and gone, to be memorialized in the media that way. And as sad as I was, and I guess enraged, really, if I'm honest with myself, about that description and characterization of him, now that he's dead, I kind of suppressed it and held on to it for about a year. In February, though, of 2017, the next year, I went to a Chicago Humanities Festival event featuring Trayvon Martin's parents. Oh. And they talked about the way that they believe the media characterization of their son really impacted the outcome of the George Zimmerman trial. And listening to them talk about the very racially tinged way they spoke about this young man who died this very violent, very tragic, yes, without thinking twice. And Darius, as I sat there and listened, everything that I had suppressed for a year about about the way my cousin was characterized just started to bubble and bubble and bubble and simmer and boil up. And when I was just about ready to burst, they stood up at the end, the folks in the Humanities Festival, and said, you know, if you have thoughts about how this subject has impacted your life, why don't you write those down for us and send them to Chicago Humanities Festival at HuffingtonPost.com. So I went home that night and penned this
multiple
essay.
page.
Yes, and wrote down all of my thoughts and typed it and sent it and thought that would be the end. I just thought that would be the end. The very next day, though, I received an email back from the Black Voices editor-in-chief of Huffington Post, chief editor of Huffington Post, Black Voices, saying, hey, we want to run this tomorrow. Is that okay?
And I'd like to ask you.
Sure.
I've read it, and I said to you when I read this, because of your skill set, because of that Mizzou training, that journalism instinct, I felt like reading this was what so many of our families wish we had the platform, which is why what we do here is so important, the platform to say it. Will you do me a courtesy and read this last section of the piece? So
yes, my cousin was gang affiliated at one point in his life, and he did things that he ought not to have done, but he was young. The thing is, though, time changes everyone, and my cousin wasn't young anymore. He was growing up. He hadn't been affiliated for some time, and in the final months of his life, he'd gotten married, obtained primary custody of his children, and secured employment. I remember that he was so excited about getting a legit job that he posted a photo of himself in his uniform on Facebook. That's who he was. That's the person my family lost that fateful day. And as we'd find out in the months to come, his past gang affiliation had nothing to do with his death. But some people will never see him as anything more than a gang member for whom they don't feel sorry.
And that allows him not to.
Yeah.
This was a powerful piece, and there's so many of us. You know, I grew up in Detroit. Chicago is not my home. So many of us, as we look at this stuff, and we feel powerless. And what I loved about this is that you took back a bit of our power and went, But then let's move forward, because now you joined CAN TV 15 years ago.
Years ago, yes.
And what was your role?
I was a part-time nonprofit services coordinator.
So walk me through your, because I'm getting that cue of time, because I knew you and I would run out, but we'll talk again. Walk me through the 15 years from your first role to your current role of host of one of our most popular shows that bears your name and production supervisor of all signature programming, documentaries, and specials. Give me the abridged version of that journey.
Sure, I'm going to tie everything
Come
together.
on.
We're going to work this
Let's
through.
do it.
So, right, so I started here in 2007 as a part-time coordinator, and I had a couple responsibilities. Responsibility number one was to work on Channel 42, writing copy.
The FYI
channel.
channel.
Yes, for that channel. And then occasionally answering phones for our hotline shows. The biggest hotline show we had was Political Forum. These politicians would come in, they would do 25 minutes with us. The show was at that time hosted by board members, hugest show we had. And after, training and getting some experience, I was allowed to operate the phones on that show. Yes, and then maybe after 2 years of having operated the phones successfully, I had a little bit of background in journalism, having gone to Mizzou and majored in journalism, and I was given the opportunity to book a couple of guests for the show. The manager at the time needed some assistance, so she showed me how to do that. And I would do that. I would answer the phones pretty frequently and book guests occasionally. As that manager moved on, though, we got a new manager who didn't have any experience with the show. So he relied upon me a little bit more to do more of the production work, more of the booking. And he was so busy that occasionally he'd have me not just do booking, but do research and write questions. And it got to the point where I was not only answering the phones, booking the guests, doing the research, and writing questions that I knew the show from front to back. And then one fateful day.
In 2017, I believe?
Yes.
Yes.
Our immediate past executive director calls me into his office and tells me that we are running out of volunteer board members to host this show. He knows I have a television background. He knows I work on the show pretty frequently, and he wants to know if I'd be willing to step in and volunteer and host from time to time. And I said, sure, why not? So I start hosting. 2017, 2018, 2019 occasionally, and as I start hosting, the volunteers keep dropping out. The pandemic happens.
Shows up.
Yeah, and we had closed, but there was so much stuff happening in Chicago, and CAN TV felt such an obligation to the public because there's so many folks who trust us that we felt like we had to tell them what was happening from our vantage point. So I started coming in during the pandemic and hosting that show. And because I had the experience of what happened with my cousin, and because I'm my father's daughter, my father being a lawyer, a criminal defense attorney who advocates because I'm my daddy's daughter, I felt like I needed to keep in mind, as if I was going to host this show, the vantage point of the marginalized and the folks who don't have an opportunity to speak up for themselves, the people who deal with the sorts of slights that we see, having a relative shot down and then having the media thoughtlessly call them gang members, even though the Chicago the Chicago Police Department's gang database is known to be inaccurate and outdated. People who have to live with that, who don't have the power, who don't have the platform or the privilege to write for Huffington Post, to be on a television network. If I was going to do this show, to walk us through the pandemic, I was going to do it keeping those folks in mind.
The accountability of it.
Absolutely.
I'm going to, Lewis, Lewis is on our team, and I'm getting a look.
Yes.
And I'd like Lewis to be happy. So what we're going to do is take a quick break.
Okay.
We're going to come back with a segment. Thank you.
Of course.
We're going to come back with our final segment called 3 for the Road. Be right back. Stay with us. Question number 1.
Yeah.
If you could have dinner with any person, living or dead, who would it be and why?
Ooh, that would be a toss-up.
Okay.
I narrowed down to 2 people.
Okay.
I would very much love to maybe I'd love to dine with my mother and really ask her if she's proud of me. You know, yeah, I'd love to do that. And just tell her about my life and just ask her how she thinks it's going, what she wants to. Oh goodness, no, because
Go on, go.
I
Just
would
keep
love
talking.
to do that. And if not my mother, I would really love to maybe sit down with an ancestor of mine who I've never met, preferably a female who was once a slave. And I would want to ask her about her life. And I would want to hear about her journey. And I would want to tell her, maybe your life wasn't everything you thought it could have been or should have been, but because you did what you had to do,
I'm out here
I
doing
can do what I need to do.
How dare you?
But you understand.
You gave me
when I say that.
Listen,
Because no matter what you do.
You have nothing to What you will not do today is apologize for what you just gave me and this audience. I'm just going to move on to question 2. Do you have any regrets?
Not a one.
Good for you.
Not a one.
Final question. Oh, go ahead.
I would say, and that's really, because of my dad. And I know my dad never thought he would have to be a single father. I know he never thought he would have to be a girl dad. But, every time I was like, Daddy, I don't know if I'm getting anywhere. Like, I don't really know if my life is taking shape. Like, I didn't want to just live. Like, I really wanted to live with purpose. And even though I'm sure he was sick of me at a point as well, he just said, Jack,
Jack,
you got it. And he really made me feel like, even though it wasn't going how I foresaw going, it was going.
It's going.
Yeah, so thank you, Daddy.
Oh, thank you, Daddy. Daddy lawyer. Final question. One piece of advice present-day Sylvia would give her 21-year-old self.
Ignore them and keep going.
Oh!
Yeah. Yeah.
You have come onto my show and Barbara Waltered Oprah Winfrey'd me. Go ahead.
No, no,
Elaborate.
seriously. I think because when you are 21 years old, there are so many people, and I speak as someone who was bullied as a child, who have so many different opinions about who you are and who you ought to be. And those opinions, can really, if you let them, especially if you're trying to walk in your truth and do
it's
you.
pervasive.
Right, and you say, well, maybe they're right.
Yeah.
Maybe I can't. Yeah. Maybe I won't.
I haven't lived enough life to know whether or not they're right or not. I don't trust my gut on it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I thank you. What a joy working with you. I don't know about you, but I'm having a good time.
Likewise. And again, thank you for coming in and not saying, okay, out of here.
No, listen, the one thing I'm good at, I know my skills. I know how to curate. I know how to find and see talent and then let that talent lead and be great and then take credit for it. Thank you again, my friend, for joining us. And thank you, Chicago and beyond, for tuning in. I'm going to leave you with a final thought for the road, courtesy of author Angela Parkhurst. At the end of the day, I fight for those who cannot fight for themselves. If that makes me an outlaw, so be it. I've been called worse. Until next time, take good care of you and each other. Good night.
We got it.
Ooh, no, you made me cry. Oh,